Order. If we can have roll call.
Commissioner Semi. Here. Commissioner Burke. Here. Commissioner Dunn.
Here.
Commissioner Arp. Here. Commissioner Gilmetti. Commissioner Gardino. Commissioner Inman. Here. Commissioner Kehoe. Here. Commissioner Madaffer. Here. Commissioner Tavaloni. Chair Alvarado.
Yes.
We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Item 2, welcome to the region, the Orange County Transportation Agency.
Million folks that live, I'll start over. Okay, now we have volume. All right. Good afternoon, and on behalf of the 3.2 million of us that live in Orange County, welcome to our county. And I have to say, I thought this was the portion when we got to talk about will, and then I've learned that's later, but I've rallied, and I realize my job here is to give you a little bit of background about how Orange County fits in the state that you oversee with your transportation responsibilities. And I wanted to start with one real quick story. I was born in Los Angeles, and my grandfather used to put my brothers and me in his truck and drive us through Orange County down to the avocado ranches in Fallbrook, San Diego, and where we learned the fine art of avocado ranching. And on the way home, we would stop in Orange County and get lima beans and strawberries and oranges and then head home. And probably didn't see an 18-wheeler the whole time. I'm not even sure seat belts were involved because it was still the Wild West. So with that as background, fast forward to today, and we're the third most populated county in the state. We are the fifth. Santa Ana, our county seat, is the fifth most densely populated city area in the United States after New York, San Francisco, Boston, and Chicago. Along with that comes a story of diversity. A lot of people think of Orange County as being a little bit white bread, and the fact is that 2/3 of our residents are non-white. 1 out of 3 is Latino, 1 out of 5 is Asian. We have a 13% population growth, and those two demographic groups have the fastest growth rate in our county. So we truly have grown to be a small metropolitan or a large metropolitan area. We have 38 cities, 800 square miles. So before I turn it over to Daryl, I did want to say back to the lima beans and the strawberries. The industries here now are diverse as well as the people. We have medical, we have technology, of course we have tourism, we have automotive, and all of these translate to a boosted and thriving economy. So the last thing I would like to say, for those of you that read the LA Times this morning, there was an article that said, fill up on patience before driving. And I mainly wanted to thank you all for your leadership on the issues of transportation, because the I-5 in Santa Ana is one of the 10 worst freeways, not in the state, but in the nation. And it's just one window into how difficult your job is. So we at OCTA are very pleased to be partners with you and appreciate the work you do on behalf of our state. And so at this point, I'll turn it over to our Chief Executive Officer, Daryl Johnson, and he's going to talk about the variety of projects going on in the county. Thank you and welcome.
Lori, did you say 13% population growth annual?
No, by the year 2035. Oh. Thank you. Okay. All right.
Well, thank you. Am I on here? Thank you also for the opportunity to speak. And I also thought it was the time to make fun of Will and give Will a hard time, but I'll save that for later as well. As the chair said, welcome to Orange County. And I'm going to just go through a couple of quick, brief things that we're working on. I think many people think of us just as the land of freeways, and I want to make sure that you understand that there are other things that we're working on as well. We're one of 3 consolidated transportation agencies in the state of California that has this large portfolio of services. There's us, LA Metro, and the Santa Clara VTA that deal with that laundry list from freeway, streets and roads, ride share, environmental mitigation, bus, rail, streetcar, et cetera. And we take that charge seriously about how we work all of those things together. This is a quick pie of how we're funded. 74% of our funding comes from our local sales tax measure. 15% as of last week is state funding. That's declining, as you all know. And 11% is from the federal government. And the pie to the right is how our sales tax measure is carved up. And I know you can all read the pie chart, but the one thing I would point out is that we do have about $600 million set aside for environmental mitigation. So built into our sales tax measure is a very specific set aside for open space mitigation as well as water quality as it relates to transportation related runoff. And we're very excited about that. It's very important to keep track of improving the economy and the environment in Orange County, and that's baked into our sales tax program. This is a quick thank you, you guys, in my opinion, and I think many people in my job around the state think you've done a wonderful job in your stewardship of Proposition 1B. And on one page here, I would like to show you that the $867 million of Proposition 1B funds that came into Orange County, we added $955 million to that funding source. And for a total of investment of $1.8 billion, we did 110 projects. We did 9 major freeway improvements, 26 lane miles of improvements. We had 8 goods movement projects, 7 grade separations, 2 of which are open, 5 are under construction today, 12 transit improvements, including the single largest safety program on an operating railroad anywhere in the United States, 89 miles of improvements, over 63 road projects, and we did 18 safety and security projects. So again, thank you for your leadership in this, and I think it shows that when you have investment, you can deliver, and we're happy to deliver on that. One of the things I wanted to briefly talk about is the Interstate 405 improvement project. This is, as our chair said, the I-5 is one of the top 10 busiest corridors in the nation, but the I-405 is the single busiest traffic corridor in the nation, nearly 400,000 vehicles a day in the northern part of the corridor. We are underway with a project that's been 10 years in the planning, and 1 year from today, we anticipate breaking ground and starting on the single largest tolled expressway project in the state of California's history, and we will do that with your assistance and with your help. Specifically, this is our schedule of activities. We are currently underway with a toll operating agreement with the state. Our investment-grade traffic and revenue study is underway. And on March 28th, we anticipate asking the OCTA Board of Directors to release the final design-build RFP made possible under Assembly Bill 401 that passed the legislature and signed by the governor 2 sessions ago. And right in the middle, we will ask you in May of this year to approve our project approval for tolling. Item 19 on your agenda today is the guidelines associated with Assembly Bill 194, which allows this to occur. We're very excited about the opportunity, and we're excited about our partnership with the CTC in this endeavor. We will begin, as I indicated, securing financing over the course of later this year, and we will have a notice to proceed in approximately 1 year from today. The project is 16 miles and will replace 18 bridges over the Interstate 405 corridor, and you will have a continuous toll facility from the Costa Mesa area all the way to the LA County line with a direct connector to State Route 73, which is part of the Transportation Corridor Agency's toll road. So theoretically, you could go from South Orange County to Long Beach in rush hour in less than 40 minutes. I mentioned a moment ago that we're more than just highways and roads. We're one of the top 20 largest bus systems in the United States, and we're underway with a complete redo of our transit system. Earlier this month, the OCTA Board of Directors adopted a complete reallocation of our bus service to really, as our chair likes to say, fish where the fish are at, meaning let's put bus service where all the people are at, let's have high-frequency service. We're adding technology. We're going to be rolling out a mobile application. We're looking at new markets, new modes, and we're exploring express bus service, rapid bus service in the core of our county, and we're very excited about that. And we are also moving into new ground with something we call OC Streetcar. To the right of this image here is the Losan Corridor. It's the second busiest passenger rail corridor in America, carrying over 8 million passengers between Amtrak, Metrolink, and Coaster. And through our sales tax program, we have a funding set aside that will allow us to extend the reach of that rail corridor, if you will, through Santa Ana, which, as you heard, is the 5th densest city in America. It's a 4-mile modern streetcar line. It's environmentally cleared. Design is underway. And earlier this month, the President Obama listed it in the New Start in his budget as a federal New Starts program. And we will be matching that with our sales tax program, and we will also be exploring opportunities for cap and trade funding through the upcoming call for projects. This will really take Orange County into the future. This will be the first modern streetcar rail transit system built in our county, and we're extremely excited about that. It's already having land use activations within the transit zone within the city of Santa Ana, and it will link to Harbor Boulevard, which is our busiest bus system line, carrying more than 15,000 passengers per day on our bus system. We're also spending a lot of time on active transportation. We take 10% of our federal funds from the CMAQ program, and we set that aside for active transportation. We've divided our county into 5 segments, and we've done a collaborative bikeway planning study in each of those 5 county areas to ensure that cities that butt against each other have similar plans, and we have regional corridors, and this is our regional bikeway corridors map, and we have a call for projects out to our local cities in excess of $20 million today. And then finally, I'll wrap up with our environmental sustainability program. We have purchased over 1,300 acres of open space to date. We've established 11 habitat restoration projects, and we're currently working to fund a non-wasting endowment that will allow for funding and management of the open space in perpetuity over time. We've also put more than $41 million into our water quality program in 144 different projects. And as you can see there, we believe that through those efforts, we've saved over 213 million gallons of water and nearly 500,000 cubic feet of trash removed from going into our oceans. We're very proud of that, and we're proud that the voters took the opportunity to include that into our program. So hopefully that gives you a quick sense of what we're working on in Orange County from a transportation perspective. And we're happy to have you in the county today, and we look forward to further partnership. And I look forward to your consideration of item 19 as well today. Thank you.
Thank you. The Transportation Corridors Agency.
Commissioners, ladies, gentlemen, welcome. As Chair Donchek has said, welcome to the county, and as Ross and I will say, welcome to our house. We are glad that you have chosen to reside here for the next few hours. We hope that your business is efficient and that you continue to do the state's work. I'm prepared with several slides to talk to you about yourselves and everything about your job that you already know, or I can tell you about ourselves and everything that you don't want to know, or in the interest of expediency, I can just let you know the most important part of the business, and that is welcome. We're glad that you're here. Mr. Chair, in case that you don't know, if any of the speakers become verbose, you're sitting in my chair, and that button straight in front of you exercises the trap door, and you'll just be able to eliminate things. That's the one. Right, there we go. Welcome. We're glad that you're here.
Good afternoon and welcome. I'm Ross Chen, the chair of the San Joaquin Hills Transportation Corridor Agency, and I want to welcome all of you to our house, as Chairman Young has said. I will say that 16 years ago, my family and I were driving down the 73 toll road. We exited at Aliso Creek in Aliso Viejo to get directions. And in cutting through that city, which is now my city where I serve as a city councilman, we spotted a house for sale, purchased that house, and we've lived there ever since. When I was appointed to this board, my fellow council members said, that toll road is critical. It is a lifeblood to our city and to most of South Orange County, so make sure you do your job. And I'll say that that was understated. Transportation and mobility is critical to our region, to the Southern California area, and I would argue to the state. And your hard work and the work of our agencies is critical to the success of our state, and I want to thank you very much for your strong stewardship. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner, or Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Mike Craman, Chief Executive Officer of the Transportation Corridor Agencies, and welcome. Much like your job, transportation in Orange County is a partnership with OCTA, Caltrans, and TCA. The major highways in our county, over 20% of them are toll roads in Orange County here. In addition to the 51 miles of road that we have, we're also very proud of the environmental program and the over 2,000 acres that TCA has put into open space and restored as part of our program here. To highlight a couple of the things that we have on our radar right now, we have a few projects, the 241-91 connector, the 241 connection to I-5, and I think both of these projects represent the importance of completing the network and networks to regional mobility and our transportation system. And it's important that we're at that point in our development where we are making these connections to provide that sort of network and the benefits to the region. The 241-91 Express Connector is a partnership of OCTA, TCA, and 2 districts of Caltrans, as well as the Riverside County Transportation Commission. So that that in itself makes it an exciting project. But with RCTC's extension of the 91 express lanes to I-15, it's a really critical movement in this county where you can go directly from the 241 toll road into the 91 express lanes and then travel on those all the way to the I-15. So we're all in the county and in the region very excited about that project. Our wildlife safety fence is a safety fence both for the wildlife that traverse the corridors in this area as well as safety to the drivers. When the roads were built, we provided an extensive network of wildlife undercrossings, but those animals are lazy just like many of us, and they choose to cross those roads at grade, which puts them at peril. So the purpose of the safety fencing is really to help guide them to those overcrossings that are already in place, again, providing safety to both the wildlife as well as our drivers. The 241 connection to I-5, just say a little bit about that. It's an important project. We've, as an agency, taken a step back in how we look at that and really started an extensive stakeholder outreach process to really look at what are the possibilities for solving mobility in South County, as well as then completing the network and connecting to I-5. So all of you, I'm sure, will pay attention as we make progress on that important project as well. And then finally, just to welcome you here today, Mr. Chairman, I do have a plaque to recognize your commission using our facility today and our being able to host you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on. On appearances, the resolution of necessity. Stephen?
Yes, Commissioners. The next item, item number 3, is a resolution of necessity appearance. I will request that the Chair inquire if the property owner, and then the partnership or its representative are present.
Are you present? Property owner or representative? Doesn't look like it.
Well, I'll note for the record that the property owner is not present and request that the Commission approve the resolution of necessity.
It was moved by, was it Fran or Jim? Second by Lucy. Any questions? Does this need a roll call?
One question.
Sure.
If we were expecting them, Stephen?
Yes, we were.
Should we not, do we need to come back to it? Or?
No, they were noticed that they need to be here at this time, and if they're not here, that's too bad, so sad.
Any further questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. I'm sorry? Okay. So we do need to take a roll call. Okay, but it's unanimous. Okay, as we go into the general business, we've got a pretty loaded agenda this afternoon. There's probably going to be a lot of public testimony. So if the folks in the audience would self-limit the length of your testimony, we won't have to impose any time limits. So with that, we'll move on to approval of the minutes for January 21, 2020 and 21.
So moved.
Motion by Lucy, second by Mr. Tavaloni. Any questions? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Commissioners' meetings for compensation.
I move we be compensated.
Mr. Arp has a movement, and Mr. Gilmetti, has seconded it. Any questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. The Executive Director's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. First, a couple of logistical items. From a safety perspective, if we have to exit the building rapidly, there are both exits to the rear of the chamber and then to your right out this door in the back of the dais. Bathrooms are through that door, marked exit, on the to my left, and both the women's and men's facilities are just to the right as you exit the chamber. We have your microphones have a little button on them that you just need to press when you speak, and it will stay on. You don't have to hold it. Wi-Fi, the code is TCA250, and there is no password needed. So those are the logistical items. A couple of things that I wanted to bring to the Commission's attention. First of all, we have a number of upcoming meetings and events that we want to talk about. The first is actually as part of this meeting, we will have a STIP hearing tomorrow at 1 p.m. in this facility to conduct the STIP hearing for the southern part of the state. We also have a road charge technical advisory committee meeting on Friday, beginning at 10 a.m. At this facility. We have this Northern California STIP hearing on March 24th, which is going to be at Caltrans headquarters in Sacramento. We also have a town hall scheduled for the Chico area on April 13th and 14th, which will be at California State University, Chico. Wanted to alert you, because I know many of you like to attend these events. The Caltrans Fallen Workers Memorial is May 4th at the state capitol in Sacramento. And finally, just to keep you posted on the Tri-State Commission meeting, which we have scheduled in cooperation with the commissions in Oregon and in Washington for June 16 and 17 in Portland. So those are some upcoming meetings and events that we would like you to note. Also, we have a proposed change to the 2016 meeting schedule. We are proposing to modify that schedule to hold a retreat on June 29th in conjunction with the June Commission meeting to discuss the development of the annual report and other matters of importance to the Commission. And, Mr. Chairman, if there are no objection, we'll make the appropriate change to the meeting schedule. Also, as we referenced just a second ago, we will be having the STIP hearing for Southern California here tomorrow afternoon. We wanted to acknowledge that to date, Commission staff has been copied on 16 letters from regional agencies to the legislature articulating concerns regarding the current transportation funding crisis that has resulted in the necessity to deprogram and or delay $754 million worth of STIP projects. And I think that's important that we got the cooperation from the regional agencies to communicate that message to the legislature that we need to do something about the state's transportation funding crisis. Also want to extend our appreciation to the regional agencies for reaching out to the legislature to inform them of the transportation funding shortfall, the serious economic impacts, and the urgent need to find a solution other than just the letters, and that is very much appreciated. With respect to our goals for the 2016 year, just wanted to report that we're moving forward on achieving those goals. As you know, we have key goals of securing stable, reliable, and sufficient transportation funding, providing pragmatic and action-oriented policy recommendations, providing guidance to inform the preparation of statewide and regional plans. We've provided you with the strategies that are underway, and we would request that you take to heart some of the things we discussed in today's meeting, preliminary relative to our some budget issues that we discussed. 5, the next item, Mr. Chair, is to recognize the contributions and passion and commitment of our previous chair.
Oh, yes. We'd like to do, Ms. Dunn,
Yes, sir.
is present you with this token of our appreciation
Very nice.
and thank you for your commitment and all your hard work as chair last
Wow.
year.
Did you wrap it yourself, Bobby?
I did.
Look how pretty this is.
Yes.
Thank you, guys. My honor.
Next, Mr. Chair, I believe you have an announcement to make.
The commission met this morning in executive session and unanimously voted to hire Ms. Susan Branson as our next executive director, effective April 1st. Congratulations. And now, we would like to acknowledge the outgoing executive director. We have a couple things here. If you'd allow me, Mr. Kempton, to keep your hands off of this.
I tried to reach for the bag and he slapped my hand, so.
First, we'd like to present you with this plaque. Will Kempton, and go ahead and you read it.
It says, Will Kempton, in recognition and sincere appreciation of your distinguished service to the people of California, March 16, 2016. It's a beautiful plaque, beautiful, I don't know what kind of wood this is, cherry, I suspect, and with the seal of the California Transportation Commission. Thank you, Commissioners. Thank you.
And then we'd also like to present you with this resolution from the Commission. And I'd just like to say on a personal note, I don't think anybody in the last decade, last century, has done more for transportation than Will Kempton. And we're going to miss you. But I'm sure we have not yet heard the end of you.
Well, I like your reference to the last century because I was here for the full time. I also, Commissioners, want to recognize what a great staff you have at the Commission. We have had some challenges this past year. We had a number of vacancies. We've filled those vacancies with some bright, capable, talented people. This staff can take you anywhere you want to go, and I look forward to working with Susan over the next couple of weeks, and she certainly knows how to reach me by phone if she ever wants to seek my counsel, how bad it might be. But nonetheless, the staff has really performed, and I really want to express my appreciation to all of you for your efforts.
May I, Mr. Chair, share? From the staff perspective, the staff actually brought a gift today to also share. Something with you special, and staff has a party planned for Will later this month. But before I present our gift, just wanted to share on behalf of the staff how thankful we are to Will, Director Kempton. His energy is amazing and outstanding. No one works harder than Will Kempton. And his passion for transportation has just been woven through our office, and he's made dramatic improvements to just our facilities. He brought on staff. We were understaffed severely at the beginning of the year, and today we're staffed with the exception of one position. And just the degree to which you've shown us how important it is to communicate and to elevate the work that we do and share it with others and work in partnership is just amazing. And you know, the work that you've done for us in the last year and the role model, the model that you've set for us, we will continue that. And so with that, on a lighter note, Will invited us into his home as staff. And during that time, he shared with us, he showed us his new acquisition of a vehicle, a very nice car. And so we wanted to give something to Will for his car, but we realized that would not be a good idea because you may not want to put anything on it. So we took a picture of his car, and we wanted to make sure that he has something that he can hang in his home that shows that he is number one in our hearts. So.
Thank you to the staff, and Commissioner Kehoe was questioning my carbon footprint by virtue of having this vehicle, and I'm sure with Susan as the executive director, it has gotten much better. This is very cool. I actually may do that. So, all right. But thank you very much, staff. I appreciate it.
Commissioner Madafa?
I just want to say, first of all, yeah, when you get home, Will, these things probably are going to be on your car. So. But as somebody who had frankly, the privilege and the honor this last year in chairing the road charge effort, I got to work extremely closely with Will Kempton. And I have to tell you, everything that's been said just times a million. I mean, the guy doesn't stop. He's the consummate Energizer bunny. He has no bounds. He'll call at all hours. And, you know, his dedication to the state of California and to transportation has no bounds. And I think this commission is eternally grateful, and certainly the people of California are, for all of the work that you've done, Will, over your entire career. And I guess this is about your 13th retirement, so it's, you know, and you probably won't go away, except we did hear earlier today, Bev might have something to say about that. But I just want to say personally that I consider you a good friend and somebody who has just done nothing but put the state's interest at heart beyond everything. And I just want to tell you how much I appreciate that on behalf of my efforts in that, what we're looking forward to, and how we look at the future of transportation funding in the state. Thank you.
Jim.
I do want to share some little factoid I got out of this particular visit that that Susan shared with me. She actually said that Will let her get in the car to see what it was like, but there was no offer to let her drive the car. So she got to sit in it anyway. That was a good start. Well, I just want to just add to Commissioner Medaffer. He did a wonderful job of summarizing. You know, someone who, up to the point where you came on, you had a more than full career. You could have capped it off right then and gone home and felt that you had done yeoman's duty in the field of transportation in California. But you came on with a commitment to be here for at least a couple of years. Other things got in the way in terms of what the purse and the state rules and the lawyers got in the way. But you managed to do in a year basically what we had hoped that you might be able to do in a couple of years. So, you didn't just kind of stroll around that last lap. You sprinted it. You did a wonderful job. We will be forever grateful, and we are very excited about having Susan take up the baton. Thank you.
Any further comments?
Well, I don't know how to add to that, but I think we all should just give Will a standing ovation, so let's do it.
Good idea.
Can I add one more?
Sure.
I want to second everything that everyone else has said. And I want to tell you this. I think we'll see Will back in the transportation circles before the 49ers win another championship.
That'll be a long time.
And I agree. I just can't picture this man standing on the porch with the hose screaming at kids to get off his lawn. Okay. Commission reports. Buttons on the mic.
I just wanted to explain, not so much my colleagues, I already did, but to our staff and our guests today why I'm wearing dark glasses inside a building. It's not just because I'm that cool. But something happened at the hotel that my eye has something wrong with it, and so I have to wear these for the next several hours to protect my eyes. So I apologize in advance. I'm not trying to avoid eye contact or not look cool. The other thing I just wanted to have for our colleagues as well as our great staff is our foundation had another charity run last week to put salad bars in underserved schools throughout the region. And so we have more racing shirts that are cut for both women and men's sizes so that you can sweat in style, while also helping to put, now in 3 years, salad bars in 190 underserved schools for 150,000 kids. So, thank you.
Perfect.
And thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick report. As you know, we manage at CTC just a little bit in the airport realm, and so I just wanted to report out that in my role as the Orange County representative to the Ontario International Airport Authority, that a new airport director, new CEO has been hired. Kelly Friedrichsen, with 33 years of airport experience coming out of Rhode Island, and he's hitting the ground running in Ontario. And so in the full multimodal aspect of mobility for this region, making use of that amazing asset will be very helpful to our overarching Southern California region. Reminding everyone, of course, that Orange County and John Wayne Airport is still my favorite, but we're thrilled that Kelly Friedrichsen has joined, and you should be hearing more from that as well. Thank you.
Brad?
Mr. Chair, thank you. I just wanted to report that on my role of the head cheerleader for the goods movement sector, continue to encourage all of our partners, as you all know, on the federal side, and I'm sure our buddy Vince is going to talk to us in just a few minutes about freight, but we do have the fast lane NOFA that's out, the notice of funding, and a rapidly approaching deadline of April 14th on that one. I was in a meeting at DOT yesterday with Caitlin Hughes-Raymond, who is probably one of the best point people in terms of helping us figure out this first process, along with Paul Ballmer from the Office of the Secretary. So I would encourage all of you, I am just hoping that California gets a fair share of those new freight dollars. So anything we can do to be of assistance to make that happen. We have the nation's gateways right here in Southern California, and our port in Oakland is very important in terms of feeding the world with our ag industry. So I know it is very important, and anything we can do on the commission side, Will and Garth have been very active in our sustainable freight discussions, but we're here to help. And Comey's over there, and he's here to help too. So don't look away, Comey.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Just a few words about Amtrak. As you know, that FAST has provided a number of requirements for Amtrak as it moves forward in terms of budgetary approaches and how we report the various business lines. But I always add that I see myself as the person who has to be fighting for us to be sure we have a national line and a national train that provides service to all of the states and all of the regions of this country. And I am very convinced that this view is shared certainly by the Commission and by Amtrak, and hopefully a growing number of people in the Congress.
Thank you. Any further comments? Agency report. Ryan?
Well, good afternoon. First of all, let me congratulate both Will and Susan. Truly, two of the people in state government I admire the most, and I know Brian Kelly has that same sentiment, so congratulations. Will started in his report making some mention of the transportation challenge we have for us and the revenue shortfall we have before us. And we get at agency several inquiries about how that is going. You know, how are the efforts to find new revenues? And I happened to look back at what the governor said in his State of the State, and I don't think it can be said any clearer. The governor said, "Here's our challenge. We have no choice but to maintain our transportation infrastructure. Yet doing so without expanded and permanent revenue source is impossible. That means that at some point, sooner rather than later, we have to bite the bullet and enact new fees and taxes for this purpose. Ideology and politics stand in the way, but one way or another, the roads must be fixed." And that says it fairly clearly. It must be done. The administration is fully committed to getting it done. There was another statistic in the governor's budget this year that indicated that with the new investments in that plan, the state would save over $5.8 billion in future costs by being able to come forward and maintain pavement, culverts, et cetera, before they fall into a worse state of repair that'll require a more expensive treatment. So, on an annualized basis, that's something like $600 million a year that we're adding to our cost if this is delayed further. The CTC, of course, has very difficult work to do on the STIP amendment, as well as all the regions, and looking at what projects to pull out of the STIP. That's a clear result of our current finance system and how the excise tax is adjusted annually to meet whatever the pump price is at that given time. Clearly, we're experiencing very low gasoline prices currently, but that's having a huge impact on transportation funding. And while we started out trying to make matters better, it's making the status quo even worse, as you all know. In talking about the governor's plan, we often talk about the fix-it-first benefit, the freight benefit, the transit benefit, but clearly in that plan, as well as the different legislative plans that have been put on the table, the STIP is greatly fixed as well. It would reverse the need to pull projects out of the STIP, and I think would be looking at a year 4 and 5 in that program where we're adding net new projects. The past STIP had an inflow in those out years of something like $700 million a year, and that would be the level of magnitude you'd see for adding projects. So that continues to be very important work, and again, I want to commend the commissioners for all your efforts to work with your local communities, work with stakeholders of many types, and we will continue to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Question from the department, Mr. Daughtry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Let me open by offering my sincere congratulations to Susan. I don't think it's any secret to her. I hope it's not a secret to her that I'm a big Susan Branson fan. You all have been well served by her being a staff member, and I think you will be well served by her as your new executive director. And I think this slams the door on me trying to hire her back at Caltrans pretty tightly. So I have a couple of items I'd like to share with you, and then I will close with a word about exiting Executive Director Will Kempton. On a couple of personnel issues for us, my sustainability extraordinaire director, Mr. Stephen Cliff, has moved on to greener pastures. He's actually serving as an advisor to ARB, so I wish him well. And Marlon Flournoy, our District 3 planning deputy, is going to fill those shoes on an interim basis for sustainability. The only other personnel issue that I would share with you is we've backfilled our vacancy for the Division of Research and Innovation with Mr. Jim Appleton. So maybe at a future meeting we can have an opportunity for Jim to talk about some of the efforts that we're doing in our research program. Over the last week, especially last weekend, we had considerable storms throughout the state, most notably in Northern California, and I know that our maintenance employees and traffic operations folks were very busy. We had several routes that were compromised, and we're working through emergency director's orders to restore those. Two that I can note is State Route 3 in Northern California, as well as State Route 121. Both of them were partially washed away, and we're working to clean those up. There were several other flooding areas as well as small rock slides that we've been able to repair. But the storms, although we need the water, keep our maintenance folks very busy. A couple of items on the communication front. Hopefully you all have a copy of the latest mile marker in front of you. It was distributed on March 7th. We have provided you with hard copies, but it is also available and prominently displayed on our home website, and there's a couple of articles in there about asset management, about the impacts of the declining gas tax, and so on, as well as the road charge. So I invite you to peruse that. One other e-newsletter that we put together, and partly in direct response to Commissioner Dunn's comments about telling a little bit more of our story, akin to the newsletter that we were putting out on sustainability. And 2 weeks ago, we put out our first email blast on that, and that e-newsletter for the second edition of it will go out this week. And I think that was a very relevant comment to be able to put information out and continue to tell our story about all the other activities that we are doing. We will continue to circulate our sustainability newsletter as well. Couple of items, and I'm going to steal a little bit of Mr. Vince Mamano's thunder and talk about the Fast Lane, the discretionary program for freight, and he can expand on it as well. But we have initiated efforts in reaching out to our local partners and having a stakeholder call, which we did on March 8th. We have an exhaustive list of projects that may fit the criteria of that program. There are deliverability requirements of that program. They have to be out in construction within 18 months. And there are matching requirements that need to be made. And we have an exhaustive list of projects. We are now evaluating which of those would be the most competitive for the department to put forward. Any public agency can nominate up to 3 projects, and we're currently evaluating all the projects that we have along those lines. There's $800 million available nationally. The deadline for submittal is April 14th, so there's not much time to put it together. And in fact, there is a early consideration application date of March 25th, so we have to also identify projects along those lines. One other thing that I will share with the entire group is that I expect that local agencies will also put packages together for fast lane projects, and we will communicate with you exactly how to approach us for a letter of support for those projects. And we just want to make sure that there are matching funds and deliverability questions that are answered. And we certainly want to advocate for all the projects in California so that we can be as successful as we possibly can in that program. So we will keep you posted, and we are more than happy to bring your staff or commissioners in to see what list of projects we have to work through. So I will make that offer. We are also working through a de-obligation of federal funds for earmarks that were not used or were not actively being used. And USDOT put out an announcement that there was $2 billion that should be re-obligated to new projects because of their inactivity. The funds that were originally earmarked over 10 years, that the earmarks are originally older than 10 years and less than 10% of the project funds have been obligated, are the targets. We're compiling a list of which earmarks that those affect, and there are some requirements as far as timing to re-obligate those funds, as well as, I believe, a requirement to re-obligate those funds within 50 miles of the original obligation. If that is not possible, then I think that there are some avenues to seek to be able to re-obligate those in a larger radius. Many of those funds were earmarked to local agencies on local projects off the state highway system, and we are working through our local assistants and our division chief, Ray Zhang, to try to compile those and reach out to them. And hopefully, I don't have the exact date as to when that those funds need to be re-obligated, and maybe Vince can share that with us. Thanks for leaving me something. There you go. The other comment that so I covered those two. The last thing I wanted to do was also express my appreciation to your outgoing executive director for his partnership on the California Transportation Commission, as well as the partnership with all of your staff. It has been a very successful partnership, and that takes great leadership, and we're very grateful for that working arrangement over the last couple of years, and I expect that that would continue with Susan taking the helm. I also want to express on behalf of Caltrans our appreciation for your time at Caltrans and that portion of your career and your leadership for the Department of Transportation. And on behalf of everybody in this room, I'd like to extend our appreciation for your contribution to the industry and the transportation community in California. And lastly, I want to thank you for your influence on my career, and from your mentorship and advice, as well as different career steps along the way. I want to offer my sincere thank you for your guidance throughout my career. So thank you, Will, very much. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions.
Seeing none. Federal Highway. Oops.
Thank you, Malcolm, for those really kind comments. With respect to the issue on the earmarks, I would hope we would have an opportunity to sit down with Caltrans staff in really given the urgency of these actions in the very near future, so we can get a sense of how this is being handled and better define the Commission's role in the process. So
we'd be more than happy to do that. Norma and her staff are leading the way, and as well as local assistants to compile exactly which earmarks are going to be affected. And we'll reach out to staff in the very near future, if not this week, early next week, to try to exchange notes.
Great.
Anything else? Mr. Romano.
I'm going to do it from here because I don't like the idea that you have a trap door. So anyway. Yeah, right. Bring it. Okay, go ahead. Now we're good. Congratulations, Will. Congratulations, Susan. We're very happy for both. I'm more happy for you. Actually, our new executive director extends his well wishes in your retirement. So Butch Weidlich, many of you may know Jeff Pagnotti, who was the Federal Highway's highest career person in Federal Highway, our executive director, Butch Weidlich, who was my predecessor as the division administrator here in California, which always offended me every time Will would say, gosh, we really liked Butch. So, you know what? We really like Susan. In a good way. Don't read into that, Will. Don't read into that at all. So Malcolm was asking about the dates on the repurposing of the earmarks. August 29th. If you're intending on obligating them this year. So this is a one-year window. This is not in the authorization of the FAST Act. We're talking about the repurposing of the earmarks. This was in the Appropriations Act, which is our yearly, here's your money and go work it for the year. So we don't know that this appropriation is going to be in next year or not. So that's why you got to move on repurposing them this year. You're going to need to identify them all by September 12th of this year. But if you're going to obligate them this year, and I've already talked to several locals that are interested in re-obligating them this year, that needs to be done by August 29th. So we'll work closer with Caltrans, and all of that, all those decisions are at a local level. They're not with Federal Highway. We will not get into the discussion of, well, that earmark came from here, so it should go there. We're going to look at a much higher level to say, does it apply at the 50-mile radius? We're going to be very flexible in that area. We're going to have to be able to work with you through that, but we'll work together to move forward with that. You did leave me one, though. You didn't talk about Tiger. So Tiger is out. We have another edition of our Transportation Investment Generating Economic Recovery, Tiger. That's $500 million. Those applications are due April 29th, so be ready for those. That program's been very helpful here in California. We've had a lot of opportunity in California, a lot of projects that have been delivered in every one of the levels of Tiger. We've had that. Fast Lane, we talked about that, April 14th. With the Fast Lane, the groups that can apply under the Fast Lane are virtually all public entities can apply on the Fast Lane project. So it doesn't have to be just the state or MPO. It can be a local, tribes, subdivisions of local. So it's got to be a public entity is the primary thing. So I ask you to pay attention to that. And lastly, we had our safety rulemaking is finally out, the performance management of our Highway Safety Improvement Program, as well as our safety performance management measures. And those things that was our first of our MAP 21 rulemakings that have taken time to deliver. And those things look at are focused at reducing the number of fatalities, the rate of fatalities, the number of serious injuries, rate of serious injuries, and the number of motorized vehicles and non-motorized serious injuries. So that's what your performance measures are going to be around. They're 5-year rolling performance measures, and I think one of the other things that this rule has done is actually identified coming with a common national definition of serious injuries. Believe it or not, that's actually been quite a challenge across the country, even in the state, on defining what constitutes a serious injury. So those are all in play. There'll be more to come on the other performance management rules. You look at the rulemaking process isn't a 2-minute process, doesn't happen in a year. It's a long process, as you can see. We're still implementing the Fast Lane. We're looking at evaluating all of the rules that need to be done for the Fast Lane. I mean, not for the Fast Lane, for the Fast Act. For the Fast Act authorization. One of the things we looked at with MAP 21, we had a 3 or 4 month window before they came into effect. So it happened earlier in the year, and we knew the authorization was going to be effective at a later date. FAST Act happened this year and went backwards. So it was effective, and it backdated its effectiveness. So there's a lot of challenges, a lot of scrambling right now to try and get all of the policies and the regulation in order. And then these things like the repurposing comes in the Appropriations Act, which I think makes it a little bit challenging. But we appreciate the partnership that we have with your team, with Caltrans and the locals on this. We're going to be discussing freight here in California next week. Our administrator is coming in, talking at 3 freight roundtables in San Diego, L.A., and Oakland. We appreciate the participation from some of the CTC members that are going to be there, and the agency's participation also. And I think that is all I have. You know more about it than I do, Fran. Don't ask me the question. Tell me the answer.
Okay, here's the rest of Vince's report. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm good with that.
Vince, on the Port Performance Task Force, FAST provided for a task force to really help us decide what kind of indicators we're going to look at. And that's very, very important for our state, as you know. So if you can keep us in the loop. I know there's a lot of different opinions on that, and we just need to make sure that we are indeed part of those discussions, because when we hiccup here, the rest of the nation feels it. So if you can keep us in the loop on that. Also, we're out in the formal comment period now for the National Freight Strategic Plan, or however, whatever order that goes in. So y'all need to make sure, if you haven't taken a look, please do take a look and weigh in. And also, it is the multimodal network that we're all supposed to be working with at this time, right? So my one question for you is discussion on a FAST Act provision that talked about our bridges and overweight emergency vehicles no longer needing a permit. So can you expand on that just a little bit?
I don't have the information. I don't know that. Malcolm, do you know anything about that? No, but I can look
Okay,
into
it
that
came
and
up
find
in
out.
a discussion yesterday, and making sure, because I know we're worried about some of our bridges. And it's my understanding that the FAST Act no longer requires a permit. And so we just need to take a look and make sure, if we do have some that have some severe weight requirements, if we have the ability to mitigate before we have an accident.
We'll look
Thank
at that.
you.
Another piece to that fast lane, the discretionary program, that the notice of funding availability that came out, or NOFO, that is not just freight. So it's not just a freight project. It's freight and regionally significant highway. So it's both. I think that's something that's very important. Don't just not put in because it doesn't have the big freight component, or it's only freight. So that's 2 pieces to that. I think that was something. It came out as a real big freight, only freight, only freight, only freight, and it's been made very clear by Congress that it is freight and highway.
So I think the exact words are freight and projects of national significance.
Yeah. Hit it.
Vince, you know we love you. So,
I feel
but
it.
I wanted to.
Oh, yeah.
I just wanted to underscore what you said about the appointment of Butch Widely as
great.
the executive director.
Yeah, right.
Of the Federal Highway Administration. And
Right.
I think you will agree that
Oh, yes.
it is really beneficial that Butch is in that position, because he knows California, and he was a
Don't call him directly. I'm kind of glad you're leaving, because you'd pick up the phone and call him directly. That's my problem. Susan won't. Please don't.
I think that that's a benefit to
It
the
is.
state, and congratulations to Butch on
I'll share that. Butch he was division administrator in Utah. He came here, so Utah is a very progressive state. He came here as a division administrator of California and turned it around. He really put his fingerprint on this office and our relationship. And I think that when he came here was the big difference. And I was the deputy here in California when Butch came in as the division administrator, and really came in and said, Vince, we've got to get to know them, and they've got to know who we are. So hopefully you'll see that reflection that you've seen Federal Highway at a lot of things, and so if you're gonna curse Federal Highway, you're gonna use our first name when you curse us. You couldn't just say blank that Federal Highway. And Butch was a big part of that, and I think he moved on to the Director of Field Services West, and then he moved into headquarters as technically Federal Highway's chief engineer. So he's got a broad experience throughout the whole program, and he really understands what the states are going through. and the challenges that the DOT have. I know Malcolm knows them well too, so I think I agree with you. I think it's a great appointment for us as an agency and for the states around the country.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Regional Agencies Monitor, Sarkis.
Good afternoon, everybody. Sarkis Kachek, Santa Barbara County Association of Governments and R2PA moderator for fiscal year 15-16. It's great to see everybody. Congratulations to Chair Alvarado. We look forward to working with you in the next year.
Thank you.
We also like to congratulate Ms. Susan Branson on your appointment to Executive Director. We look forward to working with you in your new role. So the regions met this morning here at the Transportation Corridors facility, and we had a very full agenda. There's a lot going on for the regions. First of all, I'm going to talk about 5 things. First one is the FAST Act. We have been very engaged in the process with the FAST Act. We have many regional members on the various subgroups as well as the larger working group. And so we look forward to working with the stakeholders and Caltrans on providing input on the various core apportionment programs. Of interest to us is the new Formula Freight program. We are looking forward to seeing how this program will be implemented in the state of California and how it can benefit both the state and the regions collectively. And also of note, related to the Fast Lane program, we got an update on that, and we just wanted to let you know that while the state is identifying projects that they'll submit, the regions are also going to be submitting projects, especially given the circumstance with the shortage in state funding. So we're going to make sure that we apply for any discretionary funding programs. Second item is the State Transportation Improvement Program. Obviously, we continue to be very concerned with the state of the STIP. Your commission adopted a revised fund estimate at the last meeting, which proposes the deletion of $750 million in projects or delaying those projects. And we heard you loud and clear at the last commission meeting. And as Director Kempton mentioned, we have been submitting letters. We've also been making phone calls. We've been having various legislative days. And just to update you all, as of this morning, over 75% of the regions have either sent in a letter, met with their legislators, or are going to be submitting in the letter in the next week. So I know it's not 100%, but we just wanted to let you know that we heard you loud and clear. So with that, you are going to be having STIP hearings over the next week, and you're going to be hearing about our proposals on how to address the $750 million shortfall. I think you'll hear more about this, but collectively there's been about $500 million statewide that both the state and the regions are proposing. $300 million of which is coming from the regions. So it's been a painful process with our boards the last month, but we're trying to help and identify projects. With that, we're hoping that the commission will consider consideration for projects that are deleted from the 2016 STIP at the May meeting. Just looking at maybe if there's a possibility for these projects to be added when there's available capacity in the future. So that's one thing that we hope the commission will consider. And then the next item is the active transportation program. As you are aware, you've probably been briefed by your staff. There's been a lot of interest in this program, and so I would just like to start off by saying thank you to Ms. Lori Waters for her tireless work. She has been working with all the stakeholders involved, not just the regions, everybody, and there's been a lot of passionate discussion related to the program, and so we'd just like to thank Lori for her work on that. Regarding the guidelines, your commission is scheduled to have a hearing and adopt the guidelines tomorrow. The regions do support adoption of the guidelines tomorrow. One thing that we'd like to see if the commission will consider is extending the extension time limit for ATP projects. Currently it's 12 months. We understand that this is a competitive program, but sometimes there are just unforeseen circumstances where a project may need longer than 12 months. So if there's any consideration for a case-by-case, we'd appreciate it, but we understand that you want to show delivery for this program. Fourth item is earmarks. As you heard, the federal government is going through the process of repurposing older earmarks. We received an update on that, and we would just request that the regions be included in this discussion with identifying projects that are potentially going to receive funding from the old earmarks. The fifth item of note is the Trade Corridors Improvement Fund Program Guidelines. Your commission will consider updating the savings policy and to extend the deadline by 3 years to identify new projects. We just wanted to thank the commission for doing that. We realize that this time of state funding is a dire one, but you are giving us an opportunity to identify new projects, so we thank you for that. And last but not least, on behalf of the regions, I'd like to thank Mr. Will Kempton. I was going to get you an autographed Joe Montana photo, but the region's budget is pretty limited right now, so we do have a certificate recognizing all of the work that you've done for us. I know it's not as good as the Joe Montana photo, but you have our autographs on there, which I'm sure you're very proudly going to display on your wall. But thank you for all your leadership and support for the regions. So with that, I'll stop talking. If there are any questions, yes.
I hear that Kaepernick autographs are cheaper.
Well, yeah. So I was on eBay, but apparently they're taking them down now. So it's just, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sarkis, I just wanted to let the commissioners know that we did meet with the regional agencies, talking about where we go from here with respect to projects that will ultimately end up being deprogrammed from the STIP. And we agreed to work on some language that we would potentially recommend to the Commission in the STIP resolution that would figure out a way that we might be able to fast track or set aside in some way the projects that do actually get eliminated. So Commissioners' staff will be working with the regions over the next couple of months prior to the April 22nd recommendation to the Commission on the 2016 STIP to develop language which might address the concerns that Sarkis outlined.
Thank you.
Thank you. Rural counties. Jerry. Oh, it's not Jerry, it's Maura.
Just a little shorter, Commissioner. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Mara Toomey, Vice Chair of the Rural Counties Task Force. And first, I'd like to congratulate Commissioner Alvarado on his election as Chair, and of course thank Commissioner Dunn for her service during the past year. We appreciate all your efforts for the rural counties.
Thank you.
The Rural Counties Task Force met on March 11th and discussed the following issues and concerns. In regard to the STIP, the rural counties have contacted their legislators to convey that these funding cuts are devastating to rural communities, which have few resources for funding critical transportation projects. And we will continue to urge our legislators to resolve the problems this year. In regard to Senate Bill 743, the rural counties are concerned about potential increased costs for developing CEQA documents and the enhanced mitigation efforts due to the new guidelines. We're also concerned with OPR's proposal to apply alternative metrics statewide and the consequences that are likely to result due to the distinct differences between rural and urban communities. In regard to the active transportation program, the rural counties want to express their appreciation for the efforts of the Commission and staff to consider the differences between rural and urban communities and continuing to work with us to address our concerns regarding the scoring criteria, particularly as it relates to disadvantaged communities. And finally, we would like to thank Executive Director Kempton for all his years of service and his extensive efforts on the rural's behalf, and extend our best wishes for retirement in your new car. And we'd like to, of course, extend our congratulations to Susan Branson on her appointment as Executive Director. That concludes my report. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Question? Seeing none, thank you. Self-help. Diane.
Good afternoon, Chair Alvarado, members of the Commission. Staff is handing out a recent update on activity that's happening around the state with respect to raising sales taxes. And I'll be talking about that in a minute. But first, I wanted to recognize the great service of your Executive Director with 15 more days. He is the founding father of the Self-Help County Coalition, and we'll be inviting you to our April board meeting where we will be presenting you with the official pair of fuzzy dice from the Self-Help Coalition for your new car. Thank you very much for your leadership. You've been an example for many of us, and particularly through the bond program, which we all miss. We thank you for getting us all through that and the great delivery record. We'd also like to congratulate Ms. Branson, who hopefully will continue in the great footsteps of Will. I'm sure she will. And thank you from all of us for answering our panicked phone calls. I know I myself made a few last week, and she is fantastic, and you made a great choice there. February and March are legislative days in Sacramento, so all of us, all 20 of us, are bringing our local representatives up to Sacramento to talk about the shortfall in funding. I wanted to bring your attention particularly to the local street and road shortfall. When the highway user tax account fix happened beginning in 2011, there was a guarantee of funding for the debt service on the bonds, which causes the reduction in HUDA funds to have an inordinate hit on local street and roads. So just as an example, the fiscal year 14-15 number for our local cities, towns, and the counties was $600 million coming from HUDA, and we're looking at an amount just over $100 million coming up in fiscal year 17-18. So we're going to be bringing that to the attention of our legislators. We also want to seek their recognition and support for all the ways that we at the local level are trying to deal with the revenue shortfall, specifically our efforts towards toll road implementation, sales taxes, general taxes, and other fees. With respect to the FAST Act, I did want to particularly mention that the match requirement for the fast lane projects is 40%, which is substantial. And all of the self-help counties are looking at our revenue and how we might be able to develop projects that bring this non-federal revenue forward to get more money back into California. We look forward to coordination with the department and the CTC on that implementation effort. I also want to mention that the FAST Act and its attendant appropriation exempted jet fuel from sales taxes, and we're all working hard through our federal congressional reps to correct that. We feel as though those estimates that we relied on when we passed local sales taxes will be damaged if this is not corrected. So we'll be talking more with your staff on how you might be able to support us with that effort. Finally, I did want to refer to this, which is our effort as we've learned from our leaders over the years, such as Will. We're trying to fix what's wrong. We have over $1.6 billion in planned sales taxes under consideration right now for the 2016 ballots. I gave you a summary in December. Here's an updated summary as of this week. There's a lot of activity at the local level with both our local jurisdictions, with our business communities, and also with many of you. I wanted to thank you and encourage you to support the local efforts, continue supporting the local education efforts that we agencies are engaged in right now to bring attention to the needs and the efforts associated with raising revenue. lastly, I wanted to just reflect on when I came here in December, how supportive and eager you were to help us in any way possible with raising local revenue. And I wanted to mention that in cutting this $754 million from the STIP, that many of the local counties have matching local funds that go into those projects, and what actually might be lost is twice or more in terms of available funds. And while it's a strong and good policy that you look at the loss of any federal money in the cuts that you are making, I also want to invite and would be glad to coordinate the coalition with your staff to look at the loss of local sales tax revenue in terms of it having to be set aside because the matching state funds aren't there. And perhaps we can work more closely in the future to grow what limited revenue is available. We've always done that, and we'd like to continue to do that. So. Again, I'll be back in a few months to give you yet another update on what's happening locally. We're very proud of the fact that we've been able to partner, and we look forward to continuing to partner with you going forward into the future. And I'd be glad to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, and thanks for the great work you do with the Self-Help Counties Coalition. I would just note for your matrix, good news, San Benito County is going out this June. I don't know how many years. San Benito is one of our small rural counties. I think the population total is 60,000 people in the entire county, but they have some very important improvements that they're trying to pass. So as you update that, I'd be happy to put you in touch with someone in San Benito County if you need a contact there.
Thank you. We will add them to the list. Thank you.
Lucy and Jim.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chair. I forgot to mention in Commissioner's reports that I was honored to come up to Ventura and speak in favor of that community establishing their own sales tax measure, that their own research, sharing with them lessons learned from both business community support in Orange County and the methodology Orange County used. It was really important for Ventura to develop their own tax and what they wanted to spend it on. They don't want to be Orange County. They don't want to be LA County. So, but I learned a lot myself going and speaking to that group. But I really thank you for this list, and anything that we can do to help the education campaign, the better.
Well, thank you much
Thanks,
for
Diane.
your efforts.
Just a brief comment that's actually directed to you and the two previous presenters, and that is just to thank you on behalf of the Commission for heeding the call to get out and get this message to your elected representatives. It's critical, and if it has done nothing up to this point, it has probably been an eye-opener to those who've done the reaching out of how intractable this situation is becoming, and how some legislators, when they are actually faced now with the hardcore consequences of inaction, seem to think that this is a political ploy. It's not. We need to make sure that we uniformly inform everybody this is a natural process that we all have to go through when there is no money, when we have to reevaluate the STIP. And your point, I think, is well taken in that the total economic impact of this far exceeds the $750 million or so that we have actually focused on. It goes to matching money, both federal and local. It also goes to all of the filter down, the trickle down. I hate that word, but it is the impact trickles down through many aspects of the waterfall. There you go. And so the economic impact is much greater. I would encourage those of you who have an opportunity to take a look at the California Alliance for Jobs website, which is has put some information together with the help of the carpenters. Thanks to Commissioner Alvarado in his day job, they have an excellent economic impact. They have an economist that did some real good number crunching on how this is really going to affect everyone from a total economic standpoint. So take a look at that. We must keep the charge going forward and do all that we can. Thank you.
Fran?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of things, Dan. We had a conversation earlier today about the SCAG region and 75% of our funds being local. Do you have at the tip of your fingertips the percentage of our transportation dollars that are locally generated through all of these as they represent? I think that's important in a whole bunch of different levels, but the magnitude, I mean, when we go through our RTP process here in this region, I mean, it blows our mind to think that really 3/4 of that pie in our region is really from folks helping themselves. And I think it's important when we do our FAST Act applications, our Tiger applications, all of this. I mean, we're doing our part here in our state, and I'm told that on this aviation, I think we're going to talk about it a little later, but I want to encourage you to stick around on that too. I believe it was a rulemaking that the FAA kind of did, and none of us were on top of that. So it's at markup today in the Senate side for what they will do with aviation, but the jury's still out. They've just done an extension on the aviation bill, is my understanding, and we're likely to see yet maybe another one. So I do think that's an important discussion for all of us to be aware of, just when you think about how important it is for all of us in terms of the leverage these dollars bring.
You know, if I may, Chair, in the Bay Area region, it's about 73% local generation of funds, and you know, since being active in transportation since the 1980s, it's been a steady decline, not only in actual revenue, but in the buying power of that revenue as well. And we had a long debate at the MTC Commission last week when they approved the recommended cuts from our 9-county Bay Area as to what message to send. I think we're all struggling with that in terms of making up for the loss of revenue, or we're not going to rescue anymore. We need to send a strong message of pain. So we're all trying to find the right balance between, how to support our very fast economy right now while still sending a message that we need the state to do more.
Mr. Chair, Diana appropriately pointed out some of the details that I'd overlooked as far as the matching funds, and just some additional information is, yes, 60% of it is the max for coming from the fast lane, but 20% of it can come from other federal programs. So the total federal contribution on any specific project can be up to 80%. Okay. And it also was noted that 10% of the dollars are set aside for small projects and 25% of the dollars are set aside for rural projects. So I think that that's germane to this commission as well as folks in the audience as well.
And we have a great small rural project in the Marin Sonoma Narrows that we hope you put on the top of your list. Thank you, Malcolm.
You're the South Powell County's chair. Any other comments? Thank you, Diane.
Thank you for your time.
Okay. Again, we want to remind everybody, now we're going to get into the meat and potatoes part of the meeting to kind of limit your testimony as we take up these next round of policy matters. So item number 14, Eric.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioners, can you hear me? I don't know. Is this working? Now, can you hear me? Anybody? Anybody out there? Does this work better?
Works better.
All right. So state and federal legislation, this book item, Commissioners, we have 3 issues really to talk about here, and there will maybe be more issues as you guys want to bring them up. But in the book item, first I want to talk about the legislative bill introduction deadline was February 19th, so we're pretty familiar with all of the bills that are out there that are affecting or involving the transportation programs, notwithstanding any gut and amends as we move forward. As you know, there's always the opportunity for shenanigans, but at this time we have a pretty good idea, and that should be represented in attachment A of the book item of the bills that staff believes are relevant to the commission. They're ranked in your item as high level bills that you might want to, the commission may want to pay more attention to, secondary bills that may have some impact on the transportation system and can be, elevated at any time, and then tertiary bills that have a minor, perhaps a minor impact on transportation or on what the commission does in transportation, but that we should probably still keep an eye on. At any time, in any way, the commissioners can provide to staff direction on how you might want to rank these in a different way, or if you think some of them don't belong, or if you want to add others. We're happy to track, but we are trying to streamline the effort of tracking bills right now so that we can spend more time on the second part of this point, which is there are a lot of these bills that are implementing recommendations that the Commission made in their annual report this year. There are at least 15 bills right now fully implementing or at least partially implementing the recommendations that we made, 12 of which are the Commission staff sent letters of support to the authors' offices already, and so at some point in this item staff would love to have the Commission ratify those support letters. They are listed in your book item. There are two more additional bills that are spot language currently, but that the authors have indicated are intending to amend, and staff is working with them to amend them into implementing two other recommendations. And then there's the Fraser bill, the Fraser Transportation Funding Bill, which the Commission took a support in concept position on in the January meeting. So with those items in front of you, staff would love to hear if you have any comments on those bills, or if you're willing to ratify the support letters that staff has already sent to the authors on those bills.
Any comments?
The one comment, Mr. Chair, that I would have is that it reinforces the fact that our annual report is being read, and especially that executive summary. And I really commend staff under the leadership of Mr. Kempton for putting together a document that people understand. And so now we're going to get our wishes where we get a lot of work as a result of being understandable, right? So I really appreciate your hard work on this, Eric, and we'll take a look at it.
Any other comments?
Just to follow up on that, Commissioner Dunn, so I think that this is a great indication of the fact that the legislature and legislative staff in particular are looking for people to help them work on transportation issues. They are not finding the answers elsewhere, and so they're coming to us. We had a roundtable for just legislative staff in December, and over 60 legislative staff came just to hear what our recommendations were. I think that they're really looking to us as help or for help, and I think that we're doing our best to fulfill that request.
Very good. So you want to make the motion to adopt?
Yes, so
yes, so that part is an action item. There's more discussed. Would you like me to go over those as well?
Yes.
Okay, so there are three more bills discussed in here that aren't implementing our legislative recommendations specifically, but that staff is recommending that the Commission take support on. Two of them involve freight funding for AB 1780, the Medina bill, takes 25% of cap and trade funds and dedicates it to a program like TCIF, with the intention that the Commission would implement it similar to TCIF, the TCIF program. The other one is a Fraser bill, AB 2170, which dedicates the FAST Act formula freight funding, not the fast lane discretionary pot, but the formula funding that is coming to the state to the TCIF program as well. Both of those bills staff recommends the Commission take a support position on. They seem very consistent with what the Commission has in the past supported, and would be a good thing for those authors to have this Commission support on. The third bill is a Hancock bill. Senator Hancock has introduced a number of bills, 4 bills related to the Oakland Harbor Intermodal Terminal Facility, which is a TCIF program project that has come to light. In fact, it's a bulk terminal facility that may in fact haul coal at some point, which is an eligible use of a bulk facility, as could be wheat or.
That's not correct. There's no contract for coal.
No, I said in the future it may, and it may not. That's right. But Senator Hancock and the Sierra Club are both concerned that is a potential use. And so Senator Hancock has introduced a number of bills with the intention of trying to keep that from happening in the future. One of those bills specifically relates to the commission in that it would require, the way it's written right now, notwithstanding any other section of law, it would require the CTC and any other agency that has any discretion over the project to begin and implement a environmental review document, or do an EIR, a full-blown EIR, which, as the book item points out, the commission is not in the position to do, has not in the past had to do. This could be very problematic for the commission, and so the staff recommends taking an opposed unless amended position on that bill, because just as commission work moves forward, it would really set a different precedent for the commission to do such a thing. And so those are the three bills that staff currently has proposed the commission take positions on. There will surely be more bills in May at the May meeting that the staff will also recommend positions on, but these are just to start with. So those are the only action portions of this book item.
I recommend a support position. A move for support position for the three items. Staff's recommendation. Correct.
One's an oppose.
Yeah.
Right.
Supporting staff recommendation on the three items. Thank you, Mr. Gilmany.
So motion by Commissioner Dunn, second by Commissioner Simi. Any other questions? All in favor?
Mr. Chair, we would also like to have ratification of the letters of support for bills implementing the commission recommendations.
Right, that was part
That's
of the
part of it.
recommendation. Any other questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Item 15.
Good afternoon, Chair and Commissioners. Stephen Keck with Caltrans. And before I begin my presentation, I'd like to follow up a little bit with some information about transportation funding in California. So as I was standing over here in the corner, I quickly looked up a publication from the Legislative Analyst's Office that was done during budget deliberations last year. And they estimated that just over half of the funding for transportation in California is locally provided funds. 25% of the funds are state-provided funds, and the other quarter would be federal funds. So that's an independent look. It's not ours. I won't claim it's ours, but it's an independent look at how transportation is funded overall, all the different pots of money. So that might help give a perspective to the conversations that were had earlier. So moving on to my normal presentation, starting with allocation capacity. We've allocated, or that you have allocated, about 38% of the allocation capacity through the January CTC meeting. There's about $1.9 billion in capacity left to go. And I don't normally talk about this, but I think it's worth pointing out that the $1.9 billion in remaining capacity includes savings from projects that you've already allocated. In this case, or as of January, it includes $87 million in SHOP savings and $15 million in STIP savings. So these funds will be available for you to reallocate to new projects. So that's pretty good news. Well, okay, that was the good news. Now the bad news. The Board of Equalization did adopt the new price-based excise tax rate for next fiscal year. And I don't think it's a surprise to anyone that they did this. They did adopt a rate of 9.8 cents per gallon. What I think is interesting about them adopting this rate, though, is they did have an extremely robust discussion about this rate. My staff and I watched the entire proceedings. I had to step out for a minute, but we watched the entire proceedings, and there was a very robust discussion. Staff did provide a few options, including looking at a 5-year smoothing or 5-year average of gas prices. They came with a legal opinion that said that the board would be within the law to adopt a 5-year average tax rate. The counter argument to that, however, was that it would have been the third change in methodology in the 4 years that they've adopted a rate. And I think a fairly valid point there was, if the prices go back up next year, will you come back and ask us to abandon the 5-year smoothing and go with the 1 year? So suffice to say, the board took action to continue their methodology of single-year looks, and that resulted in the 9.8 cents. That is not exactly what was in the adopted fund estimate, but it's consistent with, and I'm not recommending any changes to that fund estimate. And I will note that many of the local transportation stakeholders did testify at the Board of Equalization meeting, especially about the need for this transportation funding and the impact of this tax change. The board, I mean, I don't want to put words in their mouth, but they pretty much indicated they don't like this role that they have, and that if the results of their efforts are unlikable, then the law needs to be changed to fix this tax. I think that's a pretty good summation of the conversation they had. Kind of lost in all of this is the flip side of the coin, which is how they calculate diesel excise taxes. Diesel excise taxes are the exact opposite. Because sales tax is still collected on diesel, the excise tax rate is adjusted to maintain revenue neutrality overall. So as the price of diesel goes down, the excise tax actually increases. So in this case, the board is setting the rate at 3 cents higher than the current year, up to 16 cents for next year. Diesel, obviously not a very popular fuel in California overall, so this raises about $80 million, and those funds go into the state highway account for SHOP purposes. This is a chart that you've seen before in many different versions, many different times. And this time we're bringing it forward one last time. And this time we put every number we could think of on this chart. It has the tax rate. It has the total tax collected in each year. It has the different portions going to each of the set-asides for weight fee backfill, the 44-44 split for STIP, local agencies, and the SHOP. All the dollar amounts in one handy page. And this is last year, current fiscal year, and next fiscal year as adopted by the Board of Equalization. These 3 years show the most dramatic shift in the total funding over a 3-year period. I made a sort of a quip that this could be hung on the wall. I don't think it's something to be proud of, but at least everything's in one place, and you can have it handy for when these discussions come up. Update on what's going on in the world. So the governor's plan for transportation called for early loan repayments of some of these outstanding transportation loans. And just 2 weeks ago, the governor signed into law the first of those loan repayments. And this was part of a larger legislative deal having to do with non-transportation funding. But the first scheduled repayments in the first fiscal year of the governor's plan of $173 million is now in law. And the distribution of those funds is consistent with the governor's plan and consistent with what I talked about at the last meeting. So the law requires these loans to be repaid by January 1, 2017, which happens to be next fiscal year. But it's now in the law, so we can mark that one off the list of things to get done. Still, obviously, a very long way to go, but these loans will be repaid next year. At the December commission meeting, the commission adopted a revised fund estimate for the aeronautics account. And in that fund estimate, the commission adopted an assumption that included transfers from the local airport loan account into the aeronautics account to pay for projects from the aeronautics account and the aeronautics program. That is made possible through a law that was changed last year that allows the commission to make that recommendation, and it requires the concurrence of the Department of Finance. So we did submit an application to the Department of Finance to make the transfer that was assumed by the commission of $1.3 million from the local airport loan account to the aeronautics account to fund projects that were programmed. Department of Finance has denied that request. We have appealed, and we are working with your staff to come up with a comprehensive discussion plan to bring this back to Department of Finance. I'll be happy to take any comments you might have about that directly to Department of Finance. And that's all I'll say. And finally, we'll end with what's coming up. Chart C is about 2 weeks out from being finalized, and then we print and we'll mail it out to everyone. I'll say this to the folks who didn't hear me this morning, RTPA, if you would like a hard copy of this, give me your card today, and I'll put you on the list to mail out. Sometime in April, we'll mail those out. April 6th is our very first budget hearing for the Department of Transportation. We're looking forward to that. May revise in May, of course, and the final budget in June. That was as fast as I could go, and I'm complete.
And then Gimetti.
Just the chart that had the three pieces of pie. I think that would be a good chart to include. I know you're drafting a response to Senator Vidak, who had been particularly critical about this commission's response. I think that tells the story pretty darn clearly as to why we have to do what we're doing. Thanks.
I think Laurel would like to comment.
Yes, Commissioners, just real quick on that chart, that's why I stood up. I wanted to say something. That 152 in 16-17 that we're getting for the STIP is almost exactly what we're short this year. So to fully fund everything this year, we're going to have to take all that money out of 16-17. So 16-17 program, anything that's left after deleting is going to have to get pushed out.
That needs to be included in the response. Thank you.
Jim, then Fanny.
Stephen, the longer I sit up here, the crankier I get. The weight fees, when I first got on here, were supposed to be used for shop programs and deteriorating roads. And when we passed 1B, they were general obligation bonds. And my understanding of general obligation bonds are supposed to be funded out of the general fund. And so now we have like a moving of the pea around in the walnut shells. The weight fees have now been schlepped over into the general fund with the excuse that we're going to use that to pay the debt service on the 1B bonds. I don't know why we can't do it up here, why someone doesn't challenge the administration and the state for doing that, because it's really lying to the public. The public voted for general obligation bonds to be paid for out of the general fund, and it's just not happening.
So
one
person's clapping. If I
maybe
can,
that person can challenge somebody.
So I don't disagree with the sentiment at all. But I will say a general obligation bond is a general obligation of the state. And technically any revenue that the state raises can be used to pay for a general obligation bond. There have been some lawsuits in the recent past, and by that I mean in the last 20 years, challenging these types of uses of transportation funds. And the decisions are pretty clear that unless it actually says in the voter guide that the general fund will pay for it, that it's not binding. And I absolutely agree with your sentiment, 100%, but that's
I have to go back and reread the voter guide.
We have.
Stephen, on this local airport loan account, I need that for dummies, but we made a motion to amend the fund estimate, right?
Yes.
And then finance said we couldn't do that? Is that correct?
That is correct. And the law requires both the CTC and the Department of Finance to approve this transfer. They denied it, I think, out of a well-developed sense of fiscal conservatism. And I think there's discussion to be had, and they are open to discussing this. So I won't put a nail in this coffin, but I wanted to let the Commission know or be aware of the fact that they have denied their first request.
But does this have to do with the 95% match that we get from the feds? I mean, are we leaving 95% on the table if we don't do?
Yeah, so I think there is a definite transportation policy at play here where we need to provide a match to federal funds. And we did provide just this week after we received our denial a list of projects that would be affected to the Department of Finance, and that opened up discussions again. So we are having those discussions. I just wanted to make sure you're aware of the initial denial of our request.
But if this has the unintended consequences of leaving 95 cents for every dollar, we miss that on the federal side, and that goes to some other state.
Yeah, so I can't speak
I probably would take that kind of a wager on a pretty regular basis of a return on my investment. So I don't know if we clearly articulated it, because Diane would love to hear that she only has to do a 5% match and we're going to get 95% federal dollars coming in. So I think we need to really, maybe we didn't tell our story right. And then I have another question, because the last time we actually had a subcommittee meeting, we were talking about the loan repayments, and there were some questions about the loan repayment schedule back into the aeronautical loan. So are we current on that? They were talking about a big amount was coming back, I think, within the next few years.
Yeah, it is a fairly large amount for that account. It's in the single-digit millions. I want to say 6. Is it 4? Let me take it. I have it here somewhere. But that is on schedule to be repaid in the next couple of years. It's just give me a second to look it up. I'll let you know.
I just want to make sure we're not penny wise and pound foolish.
It is an $8 million loan from the local airport loan account to the general fund. That notwithstanding, it's not. I don't think it's that loan that is in the way of us making this transfer, because there are still tens of millions of dollars in that account.
Yeah, Stephen, I think maybe when you bring this back, you could clarify, because I believe there's 3 types of airport grants. There's the $10,000 per general aviation airport, which I think in statute is the first use of the revenue, or the first grant take. And then there's, I think the second category is those grants that match the federal dollars that are coming in. And then the third one is beyond what's needed for a federal dollar match. And I'm just wondering, is the discussion concerning, how much is needed for the matching grants? I thought I'd understood maybe that was what the discussion was along.
Yeah, so I don't have that detailed information with me today. So we'll work with staff to respond back to the Department of Finance, and I do think there's room for them to change their mind this year, certainly. But I will come back to the next commission meeting with more detail.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We're going to need to pick the pace up here a little bit. Item 16.
Yes, Commissioners. Item 16 is the Department's report on the asset management. The Department needs to make a report because the legislation specifies that make a report in conjunction with the adoption of the 2016 SHOP. There are certain actions that the Commission has already taken as far as asset management goes. The Commission, at its March 2015 meeting, approved 20 asset classes, approved 4 asset classes to be part of the Phase 1 of the asset measurement plan, and requested that the Department come back and report on how the assets actually are defined, the measures for the assets are defined, and set targets. That was supposed to happen in October of 2015. The federal government was supposed to do the actual technical definitions of the measures, hasn't done that yet. So in October, the Department requested the timeline be extended. The Commission put a deadline of May, so there's an expectation that the Department come back in May. There is a statement in the plan that's being presented on page 10, which has the following wording to it. If the schedule for the final rule is further delayed beyond July 2016, Caltrans plans to develop our own technical criteria for the measures for measuring technical parameters in these proposed performance measures. This would allow Caltrans to develop a 2017 SHOP 10-year plan utilizing good, fair, and poor measures for pavement and bridges. However, it would carry a risk of potential future changes once the federal rules become final. So at the May Commission meeting, staff would be in support of allowing the Department to again postpone until at least July, and then come back in August with actual measures. The federal government and Vince haven't gotten off the stick and defined what a crack is. And with that, Mike, go ahead and make your presentation on the plan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commission. Mike Johnson on behalf of the department presenting the asset management report. I'm pleased to present this report. There's some very positive steps related to asset management included in here, and I'm going to just quickly walk through them to highlight a few of the items. One of the things that the last time I presented, I heard from then Chair Dunn was a desire for a roadmap and a schedule for asset management. That is included in this report. Some of the big accomplishments that we had in 2015 include, as Stephen mentioned, the adoption of the 4 asset classes. That allowed the department to focus our effort in on those items. Much of the work with respect to asset management in 2015 was done in the area of building the foundational blocks of asset management, and that always starts with defining your inventory and getting a solid condition assessment. There's a number of items that have changed. The department has a new criteria for pavement condition assessment. We have a new criteria for bridge condition assessment, and we are continuing to build our culvert inventory out. So all of that work was going on all of last year. As Stephen mentioned, the department came to the commission last March. We proposed 4 performance measures. Those were adopted. We had to come back in October because the final rule from the federal government had not been finalized. And as of today, their current schedule is September of 2016. So we're certainly willing to come back and discuss ongoing progress with the commission at any time. But as of today, we would not expect that final rule until the earliest of September 2016. Aside from that, the department had considerable external outreach last year. We held a joint workshop with the CTC staff and CalCog. We had a workshop on MAP 21 and invited MPOs, RTPAs from all over the state to that workshop. And we formed the Transportation Asset Management Advisory Committee, which is a standing committee of external MPO, RTPA, and advocacy groups to help guide our asset management implementation. Additionally, we did some internal work to shore up our management of our shop and our 10-year plan process by implementing what we call a shop management tool. We did a number of evaluations of commercially available asset management software packages, looking at what they can offer relative to the business needs of the department. And actually 3 significant efforts related to project prioritization for future shops. We did a pilot program between July and January of this year. We did an application of that to the 2016 shop in trial, and we've initiated a contract to bring in academic decision analysis experts to look at the product of both of those to help provide the department with additional guidance and recommendations for improvement. In addition, we held risk management workshops with our local partners and with all of the Caltrans districts. That data is being compiled, and that will ultimately feed into the risk management component of the asset management plan. So for Commissioner Dunn, here is our schedule that we talked about. What this shows, I know it's very busy. I'm not going to go through it all. It is in the report. The activities defined there are those activities that are, for the most part, required under MAP 21. The federal regulation is very specific, and the status is showing where the department is with respect to each of those things. We are, I say progress and schedule 20% because we are 1 year into the implementation period granted us by SB 486. So this is a 20% checkoff point, if you will. Clearly, some of the activities are beyond 20% complete. Others have not been started. Overall, I think we're on pace. One of the requirements for this Phase 1 report and subsequent plans is a definition of the infrastructure and its current condition. These are broken out into 2 tables. The top table with pavement and bridge are showing the current inventory and the distress quantity. That's using our legacy measure, not the good, fair, poor. That's That's the area that we're waiting for the federal government to finalize the rule. And the bottom two culverts and intelligent transportation system elements, those are the measures as adopted by the Commission in March of 2015. Okay, so shifting gears, one of the really nice things I like about this report is that it's going to provide you a really nice tool for the next agenda item, which is adoption of the 2016 SHOP. There are 4 slides that I'm going to run through, and each slide covers each of the 4 asset classes. And what this chart shows in blue is the 5 prior years of the performance measure history, and the blue and yellow is a quasi-projection, quasi-actual for the current year, and then the 4 years of the SHOP are shown in red. In a sense, if the Commission adopts the 2016 SHOP as proposed in the next agenda item, this is the performance for the pavement assets that can be expected through 2020. In a sense, for pavement, when we look at the 2016 SHOP, there are 142 projects treating a total of 4,000, almost 4,900 lane miles of pavement statewide. There's almost 1,700 lane miles of rehabilitation and almost 3,200 lane miles of capital preventative maintenance, which are thin overlays. So looking at it broadly through 2020 with the investment level we have in the 2016 SHOP project portfolio, we can expect the pavement conditions to remain relatively flat with very, very incremental worsening of condition through 2020. That is all assuming that there is no additional funding put in the mix. If new money did become available through the budget process, the department will happily go through these performance charts and give you a completely different picture. For bridges, the story is a little bit better. The 2016 SHOP includes 40 bridge replacements, 138 bridge rehabilitations. We're upgrading barrier rail for safety on almost 84,000 feet of rail. We are improving vertical clearance and strength capacity on 19 bridges as part of a continuing corridor improvement project between Oakland and Sacramento on Interstate 80. And we have 26 preventative maintenance projects that will perform life extension type of projects on 208 bridges. Looking across the 2016 SHOP with the project portfolio that we have, we'll have a near-term blip in increase in distressed bridges, but through 2020 that will level out pretty much back to where we are right about now. For the traffic management system elements, we have 30 projects in the 2016 SHOP that will replace approximately 1,600 intelligent transportation system elements statewide, and we'll add 1,100 new ones. The performance shown there is positive. We show going from quite a bit below our target to meeting our targets here by the 2020 time period. That is primarily being affected through a reservation that was established and will be proposed in the 2016 SHOP agenda item. For culverts, this is somewhat of a unique asset in California in that we are still building the inventory. So the incline is representing the nearly 10 to 12,000 culverts that are being added to the inventory annually on an ongoing basis. The 2016 SHOP includes 37 projects, rehabilitating or replacing 669 culverts statewide. That's approximately 64,000 feet of culverts that are being replaced in this project portfolio. In spite of that progress that we're making in the 2016 SHOP, as we were performing the performance analysis here, we weren't particularly happy with the trend that we're seeing, and the growing inventory is coming in at approximately 14% in poor condition as we inventory it. And for that reason, the department's proposing a reservation of $100 million to be targeted specifically at culverts through the 2016 SHOP period. So in summary, the Transportation Asset Management Plan work is progressing on schedule for a 2020 implementation. This report includes the performance analysis, which I hope you find helpful as you consider the next agenda item. And I can say very positively that this 2016 SHOP project portfolio was in fact influenced by the asset management phase 1 and the performance evaluation. You see that primarily in the form of reservations, because we need time to plan the projects targeting those 2 areas that I discussed for reservations. As we move forward, we're doing considerable work right now on the 2017 SHOP 10-year plan. It will be considerably different than any 10-year plan this commission has seen in the past. It will shift us to performance management, which will be quite a nice change. And as from that point forward, that will seed the 2018 SHOP and ultimately the 2020 SHOP. And so you will see an increasing influence from asset management in future SHOP documents themselves. So that concludes my presentation, Mr. Chair. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back and start the SHOP.